30th of March 2024 at 9:33 a.m. here in Berlin, Germany. Welcome once again to our cosmic journey, casting our chart in the startup universe. Designer Jake with engineer Trey as always. Hello, Trey.
Hello, Jake.
Eh.
Uh, it's.
There it is. There's your name. You found it.
Oh God, that's really hard.
Did that hurt your hand?
It hurts my
It
head.
hurts my hands when I do that. We had quite a cycle, by the way. I think
Yeah, a banger of a cycle.
a banger of a cycle. So I think we felt really good last episode about what we accomplished in the cycle before, and we were like, this was the kind of creme de la creme of the cycles, and then I think we accomplished even more in this cycle. How excited are you for all of the demos that are going to happen today?
I'm excited to see how far we tumble from this peak
Yeah, exactly.
in the next cycle.
As Trey made it clear, we can everything was aces. We can only go up from here to the limit.
Exactly.
Perfectly setting himself up for a feeling of pain and sorrow later.
Yeah. I mean, you got to lean into it.
Yeah,
It's gonna happen anyway.
it's going to happen one day anyways. So as you can see over here, we have quite an agenda. So we're going to do Trey's checking question. And then we've got 3 demos today, 2 of which are design demos, one of which is actually a code design demo, which what is that? And kind of sandwiched between those design demos, we've got this developer demo, which is the what I wrote, better chart points in action.
Don't sound so sour when you say it. Like developer.
Developer. Oh, it's fine. But ahead of that, Mr. Henry, we have your checking question. Because we have so much to do today, I think we're just going to go right into the checking question.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, checking question is for the viewer who may not know that Jake watches a lot of cooking shows. The question is, if the sort of primary attributes of a dish are salt, fat, acid, and heat, then what are the ratios of those things for the dish that is Jake?
My personal dish of
Your
salt,
personal
fat,
dish.
acid, and heat. Well, I had a little bit of a heads up, not a ton of heads up on this one. So I am going to demonstrate this graphically. And so let's go to the chart here. So ooh boy. So we're gonna do Jake's dish. Okay. And we said that there is salt, fat, acid, and heat. And what I would say then, here, let's go to blue for the normal ones. I think I am a little too salty. Okay, so a little too salty.
Does color show up on the remarkable for like the shared screen thing?
Why, yes, it does. So you're gonna see, so there, so that. So
cool.
A little too salty. Fat, boy, it's been better before. We're gonna say it's like this. However, ooh, it is going upwards, and that is unhappy with that. So I'm a little bit salty, not as salty as Trey though. So if Trey says he's less salty than that, that's a problem.
You're answering your graph, not mine.
Okay, I'm sorry. My acidicness is probably fine. So we'll put my acid here, and heat. Depends. Are we talking about the heatness? How would you define heat when it comes to a person?
I was thinking like direct metaphors of heat, like getting hot under the collar, like anger.
Quick to anger.
That
Things like that.
quick to anger.
Not like
that
like zaddy sizzlingness.
But I think I think you can interpret it however you want.
Okay, well, I'm going to take it
question
hot under the collar
open-ended.
because
Okay.
I've already critiqued enough about myself. So for heat then, which we are in blue, okay, heat's feeling okay. I'm someone that doesn't necessarily get super.
Yeah, I think your heat
hot
bar is
under
far
the
too
collar.
high here.
Okay.
I think
Wow.
you're much more likely to be cold and calculating than hot under the collar.
Ooh, okay, fine. Here,
What you think?
there.
Yeah, yeah. That's it.
It's a cold dish. It's a
It's
cold
a,
dish served very salty and with some acids. It's a
so
gazpacho.
it's a gazpacho. I was just gonna say. So Jake is a gazpacho.
It's a gazpacho, everyone.
Yeah.
So where would I like my dish to go? Great question, viewer. Let's do so. What I would like is for my fat, obviously, to go down. Please, God. Acid, I'm fine with. It's fine. I don't know if I'm ever going to deal with the saltiness of me, but if we could take that down a little bit as well, I think that would be a welcome transition. But yeah, that's kind of where my dish. I think that's where my dish falls for right now.
I
And I'm
love
glad
it.
that I
I
could
love the
illustrate
graph.
that. Yes, thank you. What
Yeah,
about
it's
for
crazy.
you? How is your
I mean,
how's
obviously, you already spilled the beans a little bit that like salty is like goes off the graph.
Yes, indeed it does.
So my graph looks like a little bit of a U. So it's like super salty. Fat's okay. The acid is yeah, it's probably like middling or a little bit lower maybe. Because I'm considering acid as kind of like, like an acidic like a sense of humor that's very
Biting,
biting. Yeah, yeah, that kind
like
of
a
thing.
B.
And so
Arthur type figure.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I'm probably a little bit lower on that scale. And then obviously on heat it has to be high because
Yeah,
uh
quick
yeah,
to anger,
quick to
throw
anger for
things.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, so yeah, kind of like that. So salty and hot um nachos?
nachos,
Uh,
salty and hot
Yeah, or like
nachos
I'm
with
trying to think of a good.
jalapenos,
Yeah, yeah, obviously. Like I'm thinking like the big, like plate of nachos that you get, like at an American style Mexican restaurant.
which we miss
Yeah.
dearly.
Yeah, I miss Mexican food. Actually, I'm just wanting Mexican food is really what this all comes down to.
One thing, of course, one thing that happened this week is we saw Dune 2, and we went to a German movie theater in order to see Dune 2. It was fine. The movie, we're not going to critique about the movie
Yeah,
because
let's not
that's
go
not
into the movie.
our podcast, but you did get nachos. There were
I
two
did.
sauces that were available to you to pick
Yes,
from:
there was
cheese, salsa, or sour
salsa.
cream.
Oh,
And
yeah, a
and
celebration of salsa.
you chose cheese and salsa. And could you
Yeah,
describe for me kind of like how you like what this salsa was like for you?
yeah. Like take ketchup and put some extra sugar in it, and then like a little splash of Tabasco, maybe.
It wasn't altogether unpleasant, but it definitely was not salsa. And
Yeah, exactly. It was like it was the German
yeah,
like fever dream of what salsa might taste like if you only read about it in a book.
exactly.
Yeah.
So German fever dream salsa, but you ate it, and that's fine.
Well, of course I ate it.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
What am I going to do? Not eat it?
Exactly.
Yeah. But it was really fun going to a movie theater. Actually, there is one thing that I want to say, not about the movie itself, but about the experience of going to a movie at the German movie theater, is that they did an intermission in because it's a very long movie, so they did an intermission in the middle of the movie, and it's literally just like we're watching, and it's in the middle of a scene,
Like a
and
talking
like
scene.
yeah, like a talking scene. It's like in the middle of a scene, and then it's just the movie stops
It
and the
goes,
lights come on.
yeah, it looked like something went wrong.
Yeah, like literally just somebody pressed the pause button.
Yeah.
And then they backed it up, they backed the film up a little bit so that when we came back in, it just started again immediately. But it was like, maybe 30 seconds back.
Yeah.
So, previously. Uh,
Yeah, if you
yeah.
wanted any subtlety around like the intrigue around the Bene Gesserit, that was not happening during this film because it was just like poof, it was done.
Yeah, no, and yeah, like no fade out or like, yeah, it was just
It's just like
pause.
it's
Go
very
get
it was
your
very it was
go
very
get your
functional German.
nachos.
Yeah, it's like go get your beer, go get your nachos, come back. We're gonna start talking again here in a second.
Yeah. Yeah. It was cute.
Moving on, if you'd like to
Yeah.
move on.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we got a lot to cover, so we got to
yeah,
go.
yeah. So one thing that Trey had asked me to do this cycle was to help him with the curved labels that were around the chart. And we're going to show this again. So you're going to see this again, but it was shown in the previous episode. And what Trey was asking me to do was to help him, I don't know, help him math these things. And
because Jake is good at math and I am not.
Exactly. And so what Trey did, which I really appreciated because it's very Jake to do this, is that he gave me a challenge. So he's like, you have to solve, I think he said these 3 challenges. I started adding challenges to it, and he gave me rules.
It evolved.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Do you want to talk a little bit about like the challenge and the rules and like why this was?
Well, this was just to give you like a good starting point, basically, that didn't involve all of the nuances of the code in the product, so that we could just narrow it down to the one problem that was initially the issue, which was scaling a path in SVG and getting that scaling to work with a circle. The details don't really matter that much, but this was basically just a way of like providing a starting point. But then it ended up becoming this kind of scratch pad that you used for
lots of different things. So you'll see
lots of different things.
Yeah. So I couldn't use JavaScript in order to solve the problem.
Even though you tried.
Even though I tried, it's fine. And Trey said you violated the parameters of the challenge, and therefore you have lost. But then I regained the win here. So the first problem was to make sure that the labels were oriented in the right direction. The first thing that I did here, and this is, by the way, SVG code. I'm not designing things in Figma. I'm literally writing. I mean, I guess I could show you all. So let me do that.
Yeah, you could just right click and say, yeah, there you go.
So I can show you here that like this problem here has like this is a circle. This is what Trey did. This is SVG, but like these transforms here are what I wrote and designed against in order to like make sure that the labels could go into the right direction. And the secret here is that you have to transform some of the ways that the paths draw. So sometimes the path will draw from kind of like, I don't know how to describe this. So the way the paths draw, like it kind of draws around a circle like this, or maybe it's like this. And sometimes you have to reverse the way the path draws in order for the text to show up in the right direction. This was the big idea here. Ta-da!
Yeah, this was one of the really big discoveries that was really the game changer, because you would think that if you have something that just represents an arc, that it's just representing an arc and that it's not like being drawn in a particular way. And that is generally true when you're talking about SVG, but when you're talking about putting text on a path,
it depends how it's drawn. Like
it depends on how it's drawn,
like that,
which is crazy.
It's weird.
Yeah.
But we learned something.
Yeah.
And then that's exactly what I told Trey here. Like the solution here is to reverse the path. There's a tool to help you reverse paths, whatever. Trey then said, can you make these arcs perfectly overlap circles? This is all about doing ratios. Again, this was the whole mathing thing that Trey is not necessarily great at. And I showed him that like, depending on whether the circle is this radius 30 or this radius 24, I can do the ratios just fine and make it all work. And that was great.
Yeah. Way simpler than I was trying to make that problem.
Yeah, exactly. Trey was going a little haywire with the whole thing. And then it's making sure that the labels can go all the way around the circle. I did it here in problem 3, but then like you can see in problem 4, and actually I can demonstrate this because this JavaScript is just for demonstration purposes. If I go around the circle here, so you can, I don't know if you can perfectly see, but I'm setting a degree of where the label should be. And at a certain point, what's going to happen is that the label is going to flip over kind of pixel by pixel. I don't think you can probably see that. Character by character, it's going to flip over. That's not what we want to have happen. But Trey was like, well, look, you did enough here in this. You can absolutely like call this a win.
Good. Yep.
And then Trey said, stop doing stuff. And I was like, no, I'm going to keep doing stuff. And so I'm going to do it my way. And this is the same thing, except what it's doing is it's drawing it on two separate, it's hard to describe. It's like two circle paths that then flips the label from one to another. And so you can see there, it does the flip. It's not exactly how Trey is doing it in code, as you're going to see. You're not going to see the code. You're going to see the implementation. But this is probably the way in which it was going to be done. And so I think if I was a douchier personality, what I would say is I just proved myself to be a full stack designer, a designer that can. I am a triple threat designer, a designer that can do UI, UX, and prototype code. I'm missing. The only other thing that I'm missing then is animation, but I'm going to get there. I am not a douchey designer. I would never call myself a full stack designer, but
But
if I
some
was,
might.
but some might.
One would.
Definitely,
One could.
one could do that. And any thoughts about the first demo?
Oh no, I loved it. It was so great to. I know I mentioned this a couple times during the cycle, but it was just really. It felt like having two developers
Yeah,
for a short period of time, and that was really really good. And for the viewer who might not know, also Jake has a computer science degree from one of the best computer science programs in the United States,
true.
and so even though he went into design, he actually does have. And there's been random times where I've like tapped Jake's brain for information that is still encoded in there but isn't on the surface. Like, I need a data structure that does this. And he's like, "Oh, you want a red black tree or whatever."
Yeah, exactly. Or a
And
balance tree or whatever they call those things. I can't remember anymore. It's been like 20
yeah, me
years.
too. Yeah, but so yeah, and then also obviously with math, like Jake is really good with math, and so when it comes to things like yeah, doing complicated ratio things and stuff, like I often will lean on him for that kind of thing. But this was a really great. I really liked the collaboration on this
Yeah,
in this cycle because it really got us. I think part of the reason why we were able to get so much done this cycle was partly because of this,
yeah,
and so that ability to flex between different roles, and this is true for both of us because there's also
right.
times where for like design things I'll get something that's partial or something that's kind of here's generally the direction that we're going, and then I will like try to make sure that design carries through the implementation, and then we
Yeah.
cycle on it. And
And I think
yeah,
Trey sometimes can get kind of like really into the weeds and things. And so just asking, like, this is just good for anyone. Just ask someone, like, I'm really in the weeds on this thing. I don't know how to, like, get out of the weeds on this. And that's what I think was probably the most helpful. And I can do the same thing with design where I would get, like, super in the weeds and something. Trey's like, why don't you just make it much more simplified? One of the things that you're going to see in later is Trey giving me feedback from the last cycle video, me implementing that and making a much better design out of all of that, which
yeah,
was
yeah,
very helpful.
yeah, yeah.
Now,
So it was
Trey
really
took
good.
my code. Yeah, Trey took my code. He then cleaned it up from prototype code into something that feels a little bit more productionalized. And do you want to talk about like where you went with all of that then?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go into the demo here in a second, but I did just want to say first, because we aren't going to dig into the code or anything, that the only thing that really changed from what Jake prototyped to what ended up in the product, or what's in the product now, is that instead of moving the text along the arc, I put the text on the arc and then rotate the whole thing into place. And that was the only missing piece for like getting it to work on all of the different parts. But that's just part of like the productionization of the stuff. So I'm going to. So this is the screen of celebs, as we call it, which obviously nothing has been done here, and there's a lot that's coming for this.
Yeah, the next
Um,
demo that we're going to show is what this screen might look like in the future.
yeah, exactly. I don't want to spoil it. So yeah,
And that's
yeah,
fine.
exactly.
I'll
So
spoil it myself.
yeah. So there's something kind of fun that I wanted to do here, which was because I didn't show this last time. I've just talked about it a couple of times. But as we've been building all of these features, because we have already done the groundwork for perspectives, which is how the user of the software will say, "This is how I want to view things," and all this groundwork, everything that we're building on top of that is carrying that. Like it's all utilizing all of that stuff. So what we're showing here is like the very barest of, actually it's not the barest of, because I can just be showing like one planet, like just the sun or just the moon. And you might think like, well, what am I doing with a chart that's like just the sun and no houses and no anything else? Well, ask anybody who's doing education in astrology and they will tell you like, I really just want to be able to show a chart with just the sun, and we're just going to talk about sun placement right now.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, so this is a very bare bones chart that's just showing like sort of the classic seven bodies, the two luminaries and the visible planets. And so I'm gonna, I think I'm sharing my whole screen, right? So you
Yeah, I
can
can
see
see it.
the terminal. Okay, cool. Like I said, we've got this perspective thing. And so I'm just gonna start adding stuff to the perspective. The first thing that I'll do is to, for example, show the zodiac. Um, and the thing you'll notice here is that we're showing the full degrees. We demoed this before, but this is very much like the Cosmos and Psyche Richard Tarnas sort of camp of kind of doing things. Um, and then when we add the zodiac, then now we're seeing the placements according to zodiac. There's still some things that are missing here, like an actual little marker here, so that you can see exactly where they are. Dealing with overlap, all this stuff still has to get in, but and then we can also then show the houses, for example. Um, and when we have house information, then we show the houses. And as you can see here, so that in this particular case, I think it's utilizing the Placidus house system. So we are now showing the house cusps. And uh, and also you could also see that this chart is unrotated. So it's actually interesting because it looks like the horizon line, but this is actually the midheaven and
Ah,
the IC. So the first
yes.
house is actually down here because we're not rotating the chart yet, which is another thing that I can add. So I can say rotate chart. Boom, chart
Look at
rotating.
that. And then rotating the chart means that you're moving the ascendant to the left-hand side.
Yeah, in this case, because it's quadrant house system. So you can see now we have all of the actual placements of the houses shown here. And then I can also, I'm going to remove, I'm going to swap an entity, which requires me to remove it and then add it. So I'm going to, I think, remove Placidus. Yes. And then I'm going to add full sign. And then now what you can see is that we're doing the whole sign houses, and you can see that the markers for the angles are here using the same glyph, obviously, and then also showing the position. And now it's showing the position of all of the things. And as you can see, they're on the correct curve. They're laid out nicely. They look consistent between both house systems. And then there was one other thing that we added here too, which I wanted to show, which is so you'll know that there's no lunar nodes here. When we've shown this before, and also in Urania, when you show the lunar node, it's just the north node.
Right.
So it wouldn't actually plot the south node, which is just the opposite side of the wheel. But it's really nice to be able to actually see it.
Yeah.
And so now you can say, I want to see the lunar nodes. And we will now show the north and south nodes.
Nice. And you'll notice that there are no house cusps here because we're in whole sign. Why?
Exactly.
Where did the house cusps go?
Well, you don't need the house cusps because in whole sign, the house cusp aligns exactly with the zodiac.
So why would you even put these things down? Some astrology software will put these things in there for no good reason.
For no good reason. It's very easy to say, like, the house cusp is at 0 of each sign. And so, yeah, it's quite straightforward to look at. This is, I think, a really nice chart to look at. Also, we can add the part of fortune. Let's just add all the parts that we currently support: the part of spirit and the part of eros. And there you have the parts.
Nice. Look at those icons. They look so good.
They're really nice. You did a very good job. And then
full stack designer. I don't say
it. I didn't say it. Some might say it.
Some might say it. I don't say that.
Yeah, and just to show that, like, here I'll remove the lunar nodes just for example. So the nodes are gone. And then if I swap over to a different chart, No notes,
They're all good.
because I'm continuing to use the same perspective.
And so what Trey is showing, by the way, this is important to talk about here. When he's jumping back to the terminal and he's typing these things in, these are things that he is doing to manipulate the perspective that
Right.
will eventually be manipulated through UI in the Cosmic Console. What's the Cosmic Console? Take a look at that episode up there. This is where we talk about it. This is where we start showing it.
But yeah, that's a good point on the uh, uh, crap. What were we just talking about?
The Cosmic Console.
Yes, the cosmic cheese. Wow. Okay, yeah, the cosmic console, because we've shown it in the past, and it's been kind of out of the product for a little bit while we did some other groundwork, and then pretty soon we're going to add that back in, and then all of those commands that I was doing in the terminal will actually be done in the cosmic console as the user would do them.
Exactly.
So anyway,
looking forward to that in a future cycle.
Yeah, it's just really cool because it is really like it's really starting to come together now.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Last thing to show, the last design demo is, let me do me solo with name. There we go. The last thing that we wanted to do was to provide a little bit of visual design on what's called the life event. The life event is what you use in order to actually cast a chart. When Trey keeps going back to that screen that has those tiles up top, those are life events, and you'll see a visual design of that here in a second. But what I wanted to refresh your memory about is the sketching that was done about this first. So if you remember, and I think I may have shown some of this last week, but this has been updated.
It wasn't as filled in.
Yeah, it wasn't as filled in, exactly. So we have these things called mini cards. The mini cards will show a certain amount of data. When you go to a grid card, it shows more data, and then it will have this like cast button here. Okay, that's great and all. So here are what you are seeing, the micro cards. So the micro cards are for when you have multiple life events that are stacked on top of one another. You'll see this eventually within code, so let's not worry about that right now. But then you get to a life event card, and this is exactly the data that you just saw that was sketched out. The date, the time, the location, whether it's named or whether it's lat long, and then the big three placements with the type that we're talking about here.
Without ending up going into a impromptu working session like we did last time, can I give feedback, or do you want me to
Of
write
course,
it down?
give feedback.
I think UTC -5 should actually be the what's it called, the abbreviation, the zone abbreviation. So it should be like PDT or PST or whatever.
Oh.
Or maybe I guess we could show both, but
Okay with
it
that.
seems like that's more the sort of standard when it comes to exactly.
Yeah, this was Central Standard Time. So you might have recognized that like there is the need to put the native on here as well. Sorry for being so zoomed in. So the native is a card. So here's the native card here, Celine Dion. And what we show here is the picture, the Rodden rating, the name, like the known by name. And then we have this idea of if you're a prominent person, you have a kind of like very short description of why you are famous. Also, you'll notice that famous people, the prominents, will have the super jazzed border, which I think, what did I call this border? It's called, I don't think you can see this. It's called UI Wild, Zinc Sky Fuchsia. It's just, there's going to be wild things in this product, and this is the first classification of wild.
I want all of what for my personal like data that's entered. I want this border for all of them. Can I do that?
Maybe we'll find out. We'll see. We'll see if that's something that we can provide.
Oh, we'll do microtransactions. You can buy borders.
You can buy borders.
That was a joke. That was a joke.
Maybe. You never know.
We're not doing that.
So when you stack it all together, you get the placements. You'll notice that the thing that I changed up top changed here because I'm using symbols correctly. Good for me. With the location and the big three. This is a grid card, so it's a little bit bigger here. And then we have this embedded native that has then this big old cast chart button. So the idea here, and actually I'll show this in a prototype, if you have multiple of these cards, it might look something like this. So you've got, and this is, I think, the correct astrological data too. So you've got Jake's card here, Trey's card here. Yes, I made you a prominent. This guy named Leo, who's got dirty data. His border is just purple because he's not a prominent person, but Celine Dion is a prominent person. You'll notice that non-prominent people do not have a slug underneath them. They're just people in the system.
Mm.
And yeah, and then on any of these, you can click cast chart. You can go, and that would take you to the view that Trey showed. You could tap on the native. That would go to a kind of a native detail page. You could probably tap up here. I don't exactly know where that goes. Might go someplace different. Who knows? Who can say? But I think from our perspective that we're feeling relatively good around how this is looking now. And I was a little bit worried that the cast chart button is going to start looking a little bit like too intense all the way down. It might still look too intense, this button. So we might have to change that. But other than that, other than some spacing up here and something that's happening with this cast chart button, it's feeling relatively good. I don't know if I'm going to keep this kind of birth thing on the right-hand side, but you never know.
Yeah. I mean, you got to start somewhere, these things are going to evolve, as we always say.
Exactly.
So yeah, nothing's set in stone, but it is really nice to see. For me, being a very visual person, it's very nice to see visual design.
Yeah, very good. And that's all for that demo. There was one other thing that we wanted to talk about. Thank you. There's one other thing we want to talk about. You wanted to talk a little bit about something.
Yeah. So as a quick preface to this, I have talked about this general topic in other venues. Like on the Arnemancy podcast, Eric's great podcast, the lovely Reverend Eric.
Does he have a YouTube channel of stuff?
I think he does. I think he does. Yeah, I think he puts them as audio on YouTube. So yeah,
okay,
we can link to it. But we can also link. We can link to the
exists,
website too.
It's linked up here. If we can't find it, it's not up there. Okay.
Yeah, it might be. And for anybody who isn't listening to the Arnemancy podcast, you should. It's great. So I talked about it on Eric's podcast, and I've talked about it in other venues. It's kind of a passionate topic of mine generally because it is about the being in the sort of long and rich history of artificers, like sorceress artificers, like people who make tools and who and create devices that are used by practitioners to do things like astrology calculations or geomantic calculations. I don't know if I've mentioned on our podcast, on the Cosmic podcast before, but there's a really great, if you look up geomancy and look at the Wikipedia page for it. I don't generally recommend the Wikipedia for any of this kind of stuff. I'll talk about that actually in a second in relation to the Antikythera mechanism, which is circling back around to this in a second. It's a little weird and windy, but there's this beautiful, on the geomancy Wikipedia page, there's this beautiful geomancy device, which I think it's from the 5th century or maybe earlier. And it's just, oh yeah, here you go. Oh, where'd it go?
Wait, is this the German one? No, this is Arabic geomancy.
Yeah.
There it is. This one.
Yeah, there. No, those are geomantic dice, which are also cool. But no, it's the one right underneath that.
Oh yeah, this thing. Oh yeah,
yeah, so cool. And it's hard to see here, but it's all Arabic, and it's just beautiful. Look at this thing; it's incredible. And so there's modern practitioners. I think there's a really broad spectrum of how people feel about and possibly integrate technology into their magical or sorceress practices, and people have different feelings about it. And so for some people, they are like, no, computers are too modern of a thing for me to feel comfortable using them in my practice or whatever. And then there's others of us who are fully leaning into that. there was a recent episode of the astrology podcast, and we'll link to this one as well, about an astrological device that was found in the I'm always like too far off screen. I have to
Yeah,
do it over here.
mine
I have to get
I can go up here. You have to be like here.
yeah, I have to be yeah.
But anyways, in
Uh,
this astrology podcast episode.
yeah, yeah, which we'll link to. There's they're talking about this astrological device which was found in an ancient shipwreck from probably somewhere around the second century. Created like this device was probably made sometime around the second century BC. Um, and it is right, like it looks like a hunk of metal, but it's because of modern technology with X-rays and all this kind of stuff. They were able to figure out, like, see inscriptions on it, like tell how many teeth individual like gears have on it,
So this
and
is
it's an
the Antikythera mechanism?
Antikythera, yeah, the Antikythera, yeah,
Anti Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I just found it.
Antiay.
I just found it.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, the Antikythera mechanism,
The anti
and it's a little bit there's like they've done some like computer renders and stuff like that of like what it might have looked like. We don't really know because so much of it has disintegrated while it was sitting at the bottom of the ocean for thousands of years. But it shows that there was a level of sophistication for these types of calculations, and the way that these calculators were created, that was well before we thought any of this stuff was possible. So it is by it. I think it is the most complicated machine, the oldest, most complicated machine that has ever been discovered. And it was used to predict eclipses because you could do the solar lunar cycles. You could do it's very likely that the Venus and Saturn synodic cycles were mapped there. There's also inscriptions for particular important holidays, and how to get the timing of those. And so yeah, it was really this just incredible device, and there was probably a lot of these things. We don't like this is just I think we only have this one, or there are some predecessors to it which we know about. People definitely wrote about these kinds of things. But while I was watching this episode, and just doing a little bit of my own research on it, it just filled me with this sense that what we're doing in writing software for astrology is in this same stream
Yeah.
that has been going for thousands of years. As soon as we started looking at the sky and trying to categorize and map and measure and create structure so that we could better understand the relationship of celestial movement and human affairs and human endeavors. um, we've been creating tooling around it, basically, and we are in that tradition. It's an amazing, beautiful tradition that we are a part of, and I think trying to honor that and remember it as we as we move forward, and as we're like doing more things to just have that sense of like we're not doing really something new. We're just
Right.
doing it with much fancier gears.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, we're in an information, even back then, we are in an information rich world. And the problem is not insufficient information, but rather it is that we are flooded by information, and how we can best provide somebody the right information at the right time in order for them to understand something, either about themselves, their place in the world, their place in the universe. That is really the power of and the magic of astrology when it comes to a personal connection with astrology. And the idea that we've been doing this for much longer than we even expected, like that we even
yeah,
thought, is just
yeah.
gives us a nice way of thinking about antiquity and thinking about our ancestors and being like, they actually had a whole lot more figured out than we give them credit for.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think also it's really cool that like we know that there were these holidays, these like sort of celebrations um that were inscribed on the device, and that it was which situated in this wasn't a fancy mantle clock. that you would like have in your house or something. Like this was a device for a practitioner to use to provide value for themselves and for the people in their community. And unlike, one of the differences from back then to now is that these devices would have been, something like this would have been only the very, very probably very wealthy and well-to-do people could have one of these things manufactured, or would have the capability of manufacturing them.
Right.
Whereas these days, we live in this incredible time where you can watch a few YouTube videos and you could start writing an astrology app. Like
As it
it's
turns out.
incredible. And
Yes.
yeah, and obviously there's a big gap between being able to do something basically and being able to do something really well. But like we are going to make software that hopefully will be we'll have a very generous free tier that anybody can use. And you can have like something even more spectacular than one of these devices that you could just go to on your computer. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's really cool.
I love it. Is there anything else you want the member to take away other than like, don't diss our ancestors? They seem to have more figured out. And anything else that we should take away from this?
Maybe just that, no matter what kind of thing you're doing, like no matter what kind of work you do in the world, or what you're, um, maybe less like the work that you do, but the work that you want to do, or your career, let's say, is probably situated in a long and glorious tradition. It's not the most of what we do isn't new. It's just it's just uh, newer. We have like better tooling, or we have better information, or whatever. But it's we were probably doing that, whatever it is, before. And so having a sense of like who came before you, and the great tradition that is the thing that you do.
As David Byrne once said, the wise man David Byrne once said, "Same as it ever was." Same as it ever was. Well, with that, I want to wish you all a happy Saturday, or whatever day you watch this podcast. Given that we were talking about cooking today, maybe why don't you take your favorite dish and adjust two of the levers? Why don't we bring down one lever, bring up another lever, and try making your favorite dish in a different way today?
Yeah, increase the acid. You're always going to be happy with that.
Look, Trey says increase the acid. He's literally just dumping lemons into whatever we have. That's fine. That's just how he thinks. Have yourself a beautiful Saturday, or whatever day you watch this video. We will see you again very soon. Bye.
Bye.